Welcome to our remote options evening presentation for students in Year 9 and their parents and carers. I'm Mrs. Purnell, Head Teacher, and co-presenting with me is Ms. Claughton, Deputy Head Teacher. Whilst we would of course much prefer to be talking to you in person in B Hall, we do hope that the presentation will provide you with key information about our GCSE curriculum. If you do have any questions, please email them to the Year 9 address box at year9options@ilkleygs.co.uk, and a member of staff will get back to you. Alternatively, if you are attending the options evening on the 9th of March, myself and Ms. Claughton, as well as a range of other colleagues, will be able to answer your questions in person. I'd also like to draw your attention to the Showbie code in the top right-hand corner of the screen. Please note that parents can only view the folder if their child has made themselves a class member. We have asked students to do that both in tutor time and via email. They do need to input the code on the screen, which will grant access to all subject presentations. These then can of course be viewed at your leisure and will continue to be available after the options evening. Of course, despite the disruption over the last 12 months, we do think students at IGS are at an advantage. This year, of course, for the first time in their school lives, they've been given the opportunity to personalise their curriculum in line with their interests, abilities and aspirations. We introduced these changes for three main reasons: to develop their knowledge, understanding and skills in subjects that were being considered for GCSE. Secondly, to give them the experience of subjects which in many schools are only available at Key Stage 4, subjects like philosophy, media and computer science. And thirdly, it was about helping them make those informed choices at GCSE. In many schools, Year 9 students have a fixed curriculum. They don't get the opportunity to choose options so early. And as we've said all along, you know, regardless of whether students have enjoyed a subject this year or found it has not lived up to their expectations, the experience should be really valuable to them. Even if a student has taken a subject that they dislike, rather they do that now and find out that it wasn't quite what they thought it would be in Year 9, rather than choose it in Year 10 and then be locked into a 2-year accredited course. Of course, we hope students have enjoyed their experiences this year, but they can't choose all of their options anyway. As I'll explain now, there are major differences between the two options processes, the one from Year 8 into 9 last year, and then the one that they're experiencing now as we choose GCSE subjects. The first main difference, of course, is that the number of compulsory core subjects is reduced. Students have been studying 10 core subjects this year. As you can see to the right of the screen, in Key Stage 4, that reduces to 6 core subjects: 2 English courses, English language and English literature, maths, science, CSI, concepts, society and ideology, which is a mixture of RE and citizenship, and then the final core element is core PE. The second main difference is that the number of options that students can take from Year 9 into 10 is further reduced. They were able to choose 6 options last year. They can now only choose 4. And the reason for that is in order to be able to specialise further in the subjects in which they're interested in and to give them more curriculum time in those subjects in order for them to complete the syllabus and gain qualifications at the very best grade possible. Thirdly, more time is spent on those 4 options, and the balance between the core curriculum and the options curriculum changes. So this year they've spent approximately 70% of their curriculum on the core and 30% on options. Next year and into Year 11, approximately 60% of their curriculum is on the core and an increased 40% on the option subjects which they choose. Of course, there is another major difference between this year and last year, and that of course is the fact that the choices that students make this year will lead to qualifications 2 years down the line. And those qualifications are, of course, the keys to their future success and will open doorways for their future career, their jobs and their life chances. Now, qualifications are the stepping stones to their future, whatever the path they decide to take. They'll help inform the next stage of education, training and future careers. So we do advise them that they should base their choices on areas of the curriculum that they enjoy first and foremost, but also areas where they will do well and courses that will challenge them and push them to succeed. As mentioned last year, over the last few years since 2015, there has been an unprecedented level of change in education, where students have experienced the biggest reforms to the curriculum and accountability framework since the changes from GCSE to O-level. I won't go through all the changes, but in summary, the key changes to previous specifications are that GCSEs are now all linear. That means that they are assessed and examined at the end of the 2-year course. Secondly, there are no opportunities for any resits. The only exception to that is in maths and English, and those resits can only be taken when students are in years 12 or 13. And then the third major change is that the number of controlled assessments or pieces of coursework have been significantly reduced from subjects or have been removed in their entirety. Again, I'm not going to spend too long on this. The other major change, of course, that has happened over the last 5 years is changes to the GCSE grading, and the numerical grading has been in place since 2017 for maths and English, and then since then for other subjects. Of course, students are accustomed to being assessed at Key Stage 3 using numerical GCSE grades. But as this diagram shows, and I think it's a diagram we talked you through last year, the level of challenge certainly has increased and there are higher expectations than there were previously. Whilst the old grade C is now in line with a new grade 4, and that used to be described as a good pass, a grade C, what is now a grade 4. The definition for a strong pass is now defined as a grade 5, what used to be an old B/C, and has been benchmarked against international standards to bring us in line with the world's highest education systems. The new grade 9, of course, that was introduced back in 2017 is also for exceptional performance and represents as higher standard than the old A-star grade used to. There is a slightly different grading system for BTEC qualifications. If students do take a BTEC subject, which are of course all accredited and valued qualifications that have equivalency to GCSE, the grading will be slightly different from the GCSE grading, where a pass is equivalent to a grade 4, a distinction equivalent to a grade 7, and a distinction star equivalent to a grade 8/9, and you can see the grade equivalents on your screen here. Because the reformed GCSEs, which were introduced first with maths and English back in 2017, are more challenging and larger in content than what the GCSE specifications were previously, this is why we introduced the changes to the school day. For example, if we take maths, I think I've explained previously, there's much more content in GCSE maths than there was previously. It includes learning formula by heart, whereas previously students would have got a formula sheet. It's also including topics like vectors, rates of change, conditional probability. And so to ensure that increased teaching was available for maths and also English, we looked to change our school day back in 2015, and we moved from a 5-period day to a 6-period day in order to increase teaching time, not for just English and maths, but for all years and all subjects, especially in years 10 and 11. And you can see that on the diagram there, showing the increased amount of time given to core subjects, but also to option subjects as well. Just to go through then the core curriculum for everyone. Core curriculum means the subjects which students are required to take. There's no element of choice. And as you can see on the slide, these are listed there. English language, English literature, maths and combined science, which is worth 2 qualifications. Now, it is worth flagging to you all now that whilst everyone is required to take science, so everyone will study the 3 sciences separately, biology, chemistry and physics, and they'll be taught by specialist teachers, that will lead in the core to a combined qualification, which is worth 2 GCSEs. However, students are able to take separate science as 3 separate GCSEs in biology, chemistry and physics. And if they want to do that, that will take up one of their option choices and will form a large part of their timetable in year 10, but especially in year 11. The other 2 core subjects include core PE and CSI, which are core because, of course, we know how important it is to stay physically healthy. And CSI, as I said before, involves citizenship and RE. And we want students to be good citizens and learn about the world around them and to develop opinions and debate important issues in society. We do want all students to achieve their personal best, whatever that may be. Now, for some students, of course, personal best will mean academic achievement at the very highest grades across more traditional GCSE subjects. For others, a more practical experience may result in a mixture of GCSEs alongside some technical qualifications. Now, neither of these is better than the other. What is most important is that students succeed at the highest appropriate level, fulfill their potential and achieve their potential in a range of subjects which support their progression onto their next steps. We do tell students choosing your options is personal to you. It should never be based on what your friends are doing. You know, in some option subjects, we have 6 different classes in subjects like business and geography, for example. So they wouldn't be guaranteed at all to be in a class with their friends anyway. And it's really important that students make choices that are right for them and allow them to achieve their personal best. Now, of course, at school, we'll help them to make informed choices and we'll continue to provide them with support and help and guidance along the way. Now, one of the routes and one of the pathways which, of course, we encourage at Ilkley Grammar School is the English Baccalaureate pathway, or EBacc as it's commonly known. Now, one thing you need to be aware of is in the vast majority of schools, they do make this route compulsory for students who have the academic ability to achieve the English Baccalaureate. Now, students at IGS actually have the choice for studying this route. The English Baccalaureate, as again we mentioned last year, is highly regarded and respected by universities in particular. It's been described as a university curriculum, and the combination of subjects which it involves is appropriate for the vast majority of IGS students, although not all. So what does that involve then if you follow the English Baccalaureate pathway? So first of all, you need to choose, as it shows you on the screen, a humanities subject, and that has to be history or geography. Now you can take both, but one of the subjects would just become one of your free choices. So you have to take history or geography. In addition to that, you need to take a language, either French or Spanish, depending on which subject you have studied since year 7. Now, of course, students that have taken double language may be able to choose the second language that they've picked up if their skills have accelerated sufficiently for them to be able to take GCSE successfully. So history or geography and a language would then leave students who were on this pathway 2 further options to take. And of course, they have then the complete choice from a full range of options. Now, it's important this route is genuinely considered and that everyone that has the ability to study these subjects and achieve a strong pass at grade 5 or above should follow this pathway. So this was a slide that we talked to you about last year. The English Baccalaureate, or the EBacc, was introduced back in 2010. It's not a separate qualification. Students don't currently get a separate certificate, but it recognises students who at GCSE achieve grades 5 to 9 in this suite of subjects which is on the screen. So English, maths, 2 sciences. Now, of course, that element is studied anyway as part of the core suite of subjects that students have to study. And then in addition, a language, French or Spanish, and then a humanity, history or geography. Now, like I've said, that suite of subjects is considered to be regarded as robust academic qualifications. Now, it's the government's ambition that across the country, 90% of the year group will study the English Baccalaureate and take history or geography and a language. And as we've said, certainly at many schools and certainly all selective and independent schools, it is a compulsory route. So if you are considering going to university in the future, especially for more competitive and academic courses, we strongly recommend you follow this route. And if you are in sets 1A and 1B for languages, this is most certainly an appropriate route for you. The subjects included are designed to demonstrate that you've studied that broad academic curriculum. You know, we know languages are challenging, that's sometimes mentioned by students, but increasingly employers are valuing language skills in a global market, and a language GCSE is now a preferred requirement for some graduate schemes. Of course, several high-performing countries such as Japan and the Netherlands and South Korea also ensure that a core curriculum of academic subjects is studied that is much wider than the current core and then examined at the age of 16. All of the subjects which make up the English Baccalaureate, with the exception of computer science, because computer science is classed as one of the sciences, all of the subjects except computer science are considered as facilitating subjects, highly valued by universities as rigorous, robust, academic, traditional qualifications. And a study by the UCL Institute of Education shows that studying subjects included in the English Baccalaureate provides students with greater opportunities in further education. Now, I'm not going to go through all the quotes there that you can see on the screen, but you can see they draw from a number of different sources, again explaining the importance of the English Baccalaureate. There is also a leaflet which is available online, and we will have copies available at the options evening, which is produced by the Department for Education, again explaining why the English Baccalaureate subjects do make up that important academic core. I'll now hand over to Miss Claughton, who will talk about some of the other routes that are also available at Ilkley Grammar School.
Thank you, Mrs. Purnell. Okay, so on to some of the other pathways that students will also, of course, have received information on in their options launch assembly in PBT last term before February with me. Students should have a red booklet that they've been given a hard copy of, and of course the booklet is available online for parents and carers to view, or if students have misplaced their hard copy. So on to pathway 2 then, which gives you a flavour of the other routes that we do ask students to explore if they decide not to take the suite of subjects, as Mrs. Purnell has explained, make up the EBacc. We do understand that many of the EBacc subjects give you that solid foundation for future study and can actually also, as research tells us, enhance your achievement in subjects such as English and maths as well. So we do still ask that students take at least one EBacc option subject, which is why you've got the mention of the EBacc on the other pathways listed here. And obviously that means that if they're not following the full EBacc, they're still having that academic rigour that opens up doors for them for later study and further study. As you can see with the pathway at the top of the screen there in red, pathway 2, the traditional GCSE pathway, students would take one EBacc subject, let's say Spanish, then they would still have a further 3 subjects to choose from freely, including any other EBacc subjects if they wish, or our other option choices, such as, for instance, GCSE PE or GCSE Media, for instance. Now, the pathway at the bottom half of the screen in blue there is another way that students can be guided to take their options. This is if students' preferred route perhaps opts for more of a technical or maybe even a vocational pathway. And again, students take at least one of the EBacc option subjects, let's say history on this occasion, and then they would take 2 option choices from our range of BTEC or technical courses, which you can see listed there, or actually a creative subject choice as well. So for example, BTEC Health and Social Care, or maybe GCSE Textiles as one of our non-BTEC but creative courses that we have on offer. You would still then have an open option to take any subject of your choice from those listed in the booklet on the subject pages. So just to kind of give you a bit of a summary, really, students' option choices could look like this for many, will look like this for many of our students here at IGS. So an EBacc option, unless already pursuing the full EBacc, which you can see on the first box displayed there, option 1. 3 further options after their 1 EBacc subject. And in choosing their options, it's also important to consider how many of those subjects lead to an end of course exam or multiple exams for some subjects, which subjects offer students the chance to some subjects offer students the chance to complete coursework alternatively, or perhaps practical assessments, portfolio work such as art, for instance, or what we now know as controlled assessment. If students would benefit from more of a coursework assessment mode, this is also a factor for students to consider when looking at the balance of subjects that they pursue. And many of the creative subjects and those BTEC subjects offer that opportunity of having coursework in place of fully terminal exams at the end of year 11. So just to sort of round off the EBacc question then, in summation, why EBacc? Before I begin to explore some of the other potential pathways in brief. All EBacc subjects on the far left of the screen there are listed, and the reason perhaps for pursuing these, if students have the ability and interest to do so, is that it keeps their options open, and the EBacc subjects are known as those facilitating subjects at A-level that allow them to take perhaps further study or academic study at degree level, for instance at universities, for as one example. And just to reinforce as well, if you don't take the full EBacc suite, which is absolutely fine, we do still expect that everybody takes at least one of the EBacc subjects. So other pathways that we do have on offer, there are a very small number of students who would benefit from having what we know as the supported study pathway. And this is where students are able to gain what we call targeted academic support to be able to secure their English, their maths, and their other core subject qualifications. Obviously, bearing in mind that those subjects unlock both future study and apprenticeships, for instance, for students to then explore as their next steps. This route is designed for supporting students to secure those subjects, and although it doesn't necessarily lead to a qualification, it does seek to develop core skills in numeracy and literacy by providing specialist support in those areas. But it is important to note that some students on this pathway may be guided towards a functional skills English or maths programme as part of this option. They will, of course, still have the entry for their GCSE English and GCSE maths as is part of their core curriculum. But this provides them with that further opportunity. If students are choosing to take this route or have been guided towards taking this route, then they will take subjects that have fewer exams at the end of year 11, and it's only for these students where we don't ask you to take one of the EBacc option subjects as part of their 4 options. Students on this pathway are likely to benefit from a curriculum which is not based solely on exams, and if this is the pathway that's right for a very small number of our students, they also will only take 3 options, with supported study taking up their final, which, you know, that means they do receive fewer qualifications as well as part of this pathway. All students on this pathway, of course, still continue the 6 core subjects that we make sure all of our students have. Students are guided to take 2 options which involve more practical assessment and fewer written exams, and this is likely to involve a BTEC or a technical qualification, and or one of the creative subjects that we've listed, or practical subjects. All students are also able to make an additional 4th choice from the full range of any subjects that are listed in the booklet to ensure breadth and balance. And then just very briefly, there are only a handful of students who may be given the chance to have an alternative curriculum, which allows them to study the core subjects, of course, but then have a bespoke timetable where they may be guided to take one option from a determined range of subjects that we have on offer. And previously, this small number of students have studied, for instance, travel and tourism, hospitality and catering over in our achievement centre. And these are just examples of options that we've offered previously. Now, Mr. Hepworth, Mr. Keane will likely have been or will be in touch if this is the right pathway for you. So just as you can see from the list on the screen there, we do have a huge range of options subjects on offer, some technical and practical, some vocational, and as you can see in those listed in blue there, and we have in total a list of 24 courses that students can choose from. And that just shows the brilliant offer that we are able to develop and provide our students at this school. The BTEC and other qualifications, of course, Mrs. Purnell's mentioned this, but just to reinforce, they are all accredited and recognised as robust qualifications, just as robust as GCSE, and are known as equivalent to GCSE. Okay. On separate science then, Mrs. Purnell has already mentioned this, so I will be brief, but if students do want to explore separate science to obtain the 3 GCSEs instead of the 2 GCSEs from combined science, students do need to select separate science as one of their options. Obviously, all students study biology, chemistry and physics from specialist teachers, but with separate science, students get an individual qualification in all 3. You really need to enjoy science to choose this option, and this is the biggest advice that we can give really to students who are sort of maybe tentative about choosing this subject choice, because of the sheer amount of lessons that are allocated on students' timetable, because in addition to what we reserve for core science, they have the option on top of that. You do have to feel a particular passion towards science, as well as already have experienced high levels of achievement in this option choice. So just to exemplify that then, everyone has 9 lessons in year 10 of science in combined science, but those who take separate science will have 15, so a further 6 lessons on top. And this increases in year 11. So all students who study science get 12 periods on their timetable, but the separate scientists get 18 periods. So as you can see across the 2-week cycle, that's a lot of time studying science. So you do have to be interested. I will go through more on this shortly, but before I do, many students ask if they are required to take separate science in order to take an A-level science subject. That's not the case, though of course a lot of the content in separate science does very much foreground the A-level science disciplines, so students that are interested perhaps in exploring the sciences at A-level, they will benefit from separate science, but it's absolutely not required. Equally, for students that may be thinking about careers in medicine later in life, Again, you don't have to take separate science GCSE. In fact, some schools don't offer this qualification, so that won't necessarily be a requirement, but it would of course provide you with an early grounding in those disciplines and an early grounding in the knowledge that you would secure at A-level. So you do have to be interested, you have to be an enthusiastic scientist with a demonstrated aptitude for science. If you're not sure if this is something you would like to explore, please do speak to Dr. Marshall or any of our science subject staff who will be able to give you a bit of further advice. Again, if you're not here in person for options evening, you can ask in your science classes, or you can email through to the options mailbox, which Mrs. Purnell has already mentioned. You should really have a clear rationale for wanting to take this option, and it does take up that whole extra option in your timetable. Right, so the options form then, all students in current year 9 have received a talk from a member of leadership team about accessing this form, and because it has changed slightly, Sims Options Online have changed the form slightly from previous years. There are a few more steps, so we have experienced some technical issues with accessing the new form. If this is you, please do go and see Mr. Holder in room C2, which is just before D floor, going down into the maths rooms. So please do go and see Mr. Holder, and he will be able to sort that out for you. If, for instance, you're experiencing a blank screen, it means that you need to re-register. So those instructions have been sent to students and they have been taught through that, but that is something that you'll need to sort out well ahead of the options deadline. We can see just by doing a check earlier today that there are some students who have yet to put down their provisional choices. Of course, you can select your provisional choices and you can click save on your online options form. It doesn't submit it finally for you, so you can use it as a practice ground. But obviously, before the options deadline, make sure those subjects you've selected are the final ones that you want to take forward. And I'll come on to the deadlines and key dates very shortly. As many of you know by now, you will need to select 4 choices and a reserved choice, and you should also rank order your choices by preference. So just by clicking them in the order that you feel most strongly about. As you'll be able to see, you can change the order of preference by unclicking and re-clicking in the order of preference to move it. You do have until the 16th of March before we take those subjects online as your final options. But we ask that you obviously visit the subject pages, visit on site and have a look around curriculum areas before you make your final choices ahead of that final deadline on the 16th. And just to point out, it is very difficult to change your options after that deadline of the 16th because senior leaders do start to construct the timetable after this point, making it very difficult to arrange. It is then almost impossible to change your options when you are in year 10 and you commence the study of those subjects. Okay, so what could it look like then? And by no means will I go through all of these, but you are able to pause the screen, of course, and have a look. So imagine that me and Mrs. Purnell and the teachers listed there are in your shoes and we're considering our GCSE option choices. Here are some examples of subjects that students may wish to choose. I did manage to ask Mrs. Roban what she would like to study if she were in your shoes, and you can see the subjects that she's gone for there. She's chosen to follow the EBacc route and also wants to explore her creative side, choosing music. And she also chose PE, which is a great combination as she has her academic subjects as well as subjects that offer practical elements too, and don't all offer fully examined content at the end. Okay, so I will just move on then to a few minor rules that we need to all be aware of. Again, this is listed in the booklet. You can't take the following combination of subjects together. You can't take, for instance, 2 technology courses together from the GCSE DT subjects listed there. This is because they're all under the same GCSE qualification, technology qualification, and we choose to be able to offer specialisms in that course. You could still take 2 technologies though. So for example, you could take textiles and also GCSE food, and just not 2 from the ones listed there. Also, you can't take GCSE drama and BTEC performing arts. They're just too similar and have the only difference being they have different modes of assessment. But please do speak to Mrs. Ramratton if you want to choose, but you're not sure which. And do visit the performing arts team if you are here on site or the subject area remotely. So in terms of the assessments then, so we often are asked about which courses lead to students completing coursework or controlled assessment and which subjects are fully examined at the end of year 11. So regardless of whichever options you choose, students all do 13 exams as part of their course subjects. So 6 exams in science, 2 in English literature, 2 in English language, and 3 papers in maths. Now, if you take the EBacc route, that is then at least 20 exams in total, depending on the subjects that you then choose. So students do need to consider that some subjects have that higher levels of examined content, so 100% exam assessment, whereas others offer methods of assessment that you can do gradually over time, or practical modules that they can submit as coursework. And this is very much a personal preference. Some students prefer taking exams and revising for exams. Some students may, find this potentially more anxiety-inducing and may perform best by picking a combination of subjects that gives them the opportunity to experience coursework, where they can manage their own revision and deadlines. Please have a look at that in the subject pages as that is all explained, or have a look at the screen there, which the graph shows the controlled assessment load in the subjects that offer controlled assessment listed there. Obviously, with health and social care, travel and tourism and engineering, for instance, offering the highest percentage of controlled assessment, the remaining percentage being an examination. This chart, by contrast, indicates to you the number of exams in the core and the EBacc subjects at the end of year 11. So linear exams, as Mrs. Purnell explained, that students do sit if they are taking the full EBacc route, because obviously subjects have multiple exams, such as languages, English and science, etc. So again, just pause the screen to see how many exams are offered that students have to do in each of those subjects. Okay, so again, there is a list on the screen there that shows you the percentage next to the subjects that have banked elements instead of terminal exams or end of year 11, end of course exams. Now, when we speak about subjects with banked elements, we just mean these subjects have the opportunity to be assessed in ways that are not just reliant on that end of course exam. And this can be for a range of reasons. They may be portfolio subjects like art, or they may have controlled assessment tasks throughout the course, or even practical submission tasks. So just to exemplify then, as you can see on the screen there, there is a range of student options, and the number of terminal exams in the subject then add up to when you are looking at subject combinations, and students just need to choose the right balance for them. So as you can see with student A there, for instance, this student has chosen a route where they have fully examination assessment, and it's all at the end of year 11, so all terminally assessed with no controlled assessment. And you can see the number of exams there is 25, and you can see the course subjects at the top are listed as separate to the option subjects below. Student B, of course, has chosen to have a mixture of the two, so subjects that are terminally assessed with no controlled assessment, and then one subject, art in this case, which is 60% portfolio work or controlled assessment. So again, this student has decided to have an option, student C, where they only have one option that is terminally assessed with no controlled assessment, and then the other 3 are based on between 40 and 60% controlled assessment. So a real balance, and have a look at that when making your choices. Okay, so there are a list of pieces of advice that are mentioned both in the booklet and on the screen there, and this is just a list of advisory points that we give to students when really deciding which choices are the right ones for them. So the first series of bullet points are about the don'ts, if you like, and then the last 3 bullet points are the do's in what to consider when taking their options. So just things like students shouldn't be making their choices based on whether they particularly like their current teacher. They're not guaranteed to get that teacher. Not basing their choices on what their friends are doing. Again, you're not guaranteed to be placed in the same classes. Also, you know, making sure then that they are basing their choices thinking ahead to their future career plans or their further study. And if you're not sure, just choose a combination that doesn't close doors and keeps your curriculum balanced. Finally, do be realistic. All subjects involve hard work. All subjects are challenging in some way, and be honest with yourself on what you think you can achieve. And as has already been mentioned, it is really difficult to make changes once you have submitted, and then virtually impossible from September. So I won't dwell on this slide here, but there are a lot of reasons, and also a lot of our own research that we've done at IGS that shows a curriculum designed by student choice. And when students do make their choices, then they do succeed in those subjects. They're bought into those subjects. They take ownership for those subjects. And as you can see from the Progress 8 scores that are listed on the screen there from our last 2 series of normal years of exams, the subjects listed there show how highly performing students do, making over and above national expectations for progress. So obviously, do encourage your children, your child, to make choices based on what they would be motivated to study, than what they obviously would believe they would achieve well in, and then consider that direction of next steps. So just to kind of come to a conclusion then, there are a series of questions that students should ask themselves in order to guide their choices if they're really struggling. And they are listed on the screen there. Again, students have seen this before in options launch assembly and in the booklet. And then a summary of the options process. We're very far along in that process now, of course, and we are nearing the deadline. The deadline, of course, is the 16th. So that is the ultimate deadline for students. They do need to meet that deadline, and we don't have flexibility on that due to the fact that the timetable is then constructed from that. And students will find out about their options in the summer term towards the end of the year when we write to them with their classes and their confirmation of their sets and subjects. So clearly students are now at the end of the process and they should be making their final choices, doing so on the online options form. If you do have any further questions or you'd like to ask something specific, perhaps something guided towards a particular subject area, then you are able to email the Year 9 options inbox and you can mark it for the attention of a particular subject, or leave it as a blank subject if you think it's just a general inquiry. We wish our Year 9 students all the best. And good luck in pursuing your options. We will watch your progress with interest, and thank you very much for listening.